Welcome back to Beyond the Plan podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that is very personal to me and something I'm very passionate about: fertility. It's complicated, it's emotional, clinical, and it's very lonely. It's also a topic that I can speak to from personal experience, and I love being open and honest about it. Today I'm joined by two women who are changing the experience of this journey: Jessica Chalk, the founder of myStoria, and Carly Malo, their head of Concierge services. Jessica is building a platform that brings structure to one of the most chaotic experiences in healthcare. She's pulling together records, symptoms, and context so patients feel prepared, informed, and actually in control. And Carly brings almost 2 decades of nursing experience in fertility and women's health, and has made it her mission to help people advocate for themselves through one of the highest stakes journeys you can ever take. This conversation sits at the intersection of medicine and lived experience. For all three of us, this isn't theoretical. So let's get into it. So Jessica, I'd like to start off by asking you, what was it that inspired you to start myStoria?
So I know we'll get into my own fertility journey, but really the basis of how I started myStoria was based on, what I had gone through as a fertility patient, looking back on my journey. And then I at the same time, my dad was going through his own heart disease journey, and my stepmom was going through her own cancer journey. And as I described to the two of them what my frustrations were and the sadness and the I wish I would have known moments were, it was so similar to the challenges that they had experienced in their own medical journeys. And I was like, this shouldn't be this hard, especially in a private pay industry, especially dealing with people that we're desperate, we're sad, we're going through a lot. There's got to be a better way for patients to be able to understand sooner what their options are, how to navigate the journey. And so I got together with a long time mentor of mine. And I was like, Carol, can we just have wine? I'm going through a life crisis. I walked away from my fertility journey. And I just I want to fix things and put my effort towards that. Does this even make sense? And sat there for hours, and she's like, Jess, go for it. You've got the passion, you've got an idea, go for it. And so that was really kind of the premise of how myStoria came to be. And then I surrounded myself with a ton of people that I experts that I'd met along my journey: fertility doctors, fertility naturopath. And then Carly, who perfect passover to Carly, was actually a fertility nurse of mine throughout my journey. And I just she was like a godsend on my journey. And I was like, I need to talk to Carly. And here we are.
That's amazing. I actually did not know that she was one of your fertility nurses until just now, even though we've
Yeah.
had a few conversations. So that's really cool. So what were you thinking, Carly, when Jessica brought this idea to you?
It was really interesting because for a while I had been feeling, I would say, a little bit burnt out of sort of bedside nursing. I was tired. Like this year, I'm coming up on 20 years. It's been a while. And it's just, I was feeling this frustration, I want to do more. I feel like I could do more. I'm meeting so many women that they say, if I knew then what I know now, I would do things different. And nobody teaches us this about their body. And over the years, I was learning more and more. And I myself was feeling frustrated. And I just, in nursing, it's hard. And I think no matter what area of nursing, there's a certain portion of it that becomes task oriented. You have all these things to do for all these people, and you always feel like you're rushing. And a lot of the reasons why we go into nursing is because you really care about people and you really want to support them and take that time. But slowly that time gets taken away from you. And then, sometimes patients leave feeling like, oh, I didn't get to ask this or say this, or I'm confused. And then you feel guilty because you feel like you're rushing through. And I had all these feelings kind of building up, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go next. And I hadn't seen Jessica. I think it had been probably at least a year. And then she connected with me, and it was like, wow, talk about right place, right time, everything coming together. This is exactly what I want to do. We can reach so many people, help so many people, and I can share all this information and knowledge with others and really get to take the time with people, as much time as they need, as many times as they need, to really get them where they need to be. and help prepare them with that information ahead of time so they go forward just really equipped with the tools that they need to hopefully get to a better outcome faster.
That's awesome. I think it's so cool that you two found each other through kind of the hard parts, but then you're building something that's going to help so many people. I really believe in it. I've already got my profile, my dashboard, and I've already been kind of playing around with it because I myself am in an infertility journey. So, really, really awesome. And I'm really grateful that you two have met each other. Have you noticed, are there any barriers that you're facing together, being that you're women in the tech space?
Like, yes and no. Like, I cannot emphasize how just pure luck and lucky I am to have had Carol Lehman. She's a co-founder and CEO of Exonify, and Christine Tetzel, a co-founder and CRO of Exonify. This like amazing people that like were in our corner from day one. And I absolutely feel like what hear and what I've heard in general from other women going through this, I feel like I've been able to avoid some of that stuff just because I've had these amazing entrepreneurs that have been there, done that, having my back, in our back. And I think like side note, like I think that's so important to find. And I hope I can do that and give back to other women entrepreneurs going through this stuff, or women trying to do whatever they trailblaze however they want to. That said, it's really tough when you're talking to different types of investors, stakeholders that you want in, advisors, where you're talking about like TMI, the most like intimate conversations that not everyone is super comfortable with. And so it's taken me some time. It's my natural being is to be TMI. I get way too deep way too quickly. And so it took me a bit of a second to like understand, just to lean into who I am and myself. And so there was a little bit of, I really don't think I want to talk about period pain anymore, or sperm health, or when to have sex or when to not have sex, and stuff like that. So we've seen a bit of a barrier there. In general, women's health is underserved, under-researched, underfunded. And so there's that has been, again, a barrier as we've gone through funding rounds. Um, Organizations like Femtech Canada has been like, they're amazing at trailblazing. We're part of, and we've joined the Medical Innovation Exchange in Kitchener that has like significantly helped us. And so these like enterprises, these people are just like building that community that surrounds you, that believes in you, makes it just so much easier. So I can't emphasize that enough. And then a team that like we're all just absolutely exhausted, pushing through, mission driven. I think all of that makes a difference as you're kind of trying to go through and build out your own company.
You touched on so many things there, but I think it was so beautiful. I think it is so refreshing, by the way, how vulnerable you are. Maybe because I'm also a little bit like that. And I'm the same way. I overshare. Soon as someone meets me, they know everything about me. I actually think I won an award at work one time for, I will tell you my life story on the first day or something like that. But I think that is so important, especially in this space. If we're not willing to talk about the TMI things like period pain and sperm health and things like that, we're not going to go anywhere with solving these problems.
Something I was thinking about when Jess was talking too, it's like, yeah, we all know there's barriers being women, but what's interesting is like statistically, it's like 1 in 6 people globally, right? In the States, it's 1 in 5 experiencing infertility. And then you think like 50% of infertility issues have some portion of male factor, so whether it's just the male or both partners. So, as time goes on, it's like these people that you're talking to, suddenly it's, oh, maybe they're in a journey, or their daughter or their brother or their sister, and they start thinking, they start listening. It's like it's getting to the point where almost everybody knows somebody. So even though it feels a little bit TMI, it's like those connections are starting to be made more and more. And, I think men are thinking about it more because there's also barriers for them when they're experiencing infertility. It's hard for them to talk about. It's also hard for them to get support as well, because there's also like sometimes there's shame involved there. And, they might not say anything out loud, but they're thinking about it, and maybe it's themselves or a family member as well.
You bring up such an important point, Carly, too, and I think needs to be acknowledged and add on. Like the number of people that have said, like, at any sort of age range, like people that had did it 20 years ago, and they're like, oh my gosh, my kids that are your age now, just 35 or maybe a bit younger, but like the point is we went through this too, and it was like mind blowing, like from men, from women, from didn't matter the number of people that were very vulnerable to say me too, and like kind of rally behind that general experience. It was actually mind blowing to me. Like every conversation I had with people ended up in someone tearing up, or both of us tearing up, or both of us just getting into like a heartfelt conversation about, the reality of that journey. And that opened up a lot of great discussions and connections and doors and stuff like that too. So that was really welcomed.
I felt like that when we got on our first call to discuss my HSA and myStoria having possible synergies. And Haley pointed it out too, that Jessica, you and I immediately, we just started talking about our own journeys. I've been going through infertility for 6.5 years, going on 7 years. And it can be so isolating if you're not willing to be vulnerable. And then the moment you're willing to just open up and talk about it, sure, some people will, be kind of, I've had people be legitimately rude if I use like the term trying. They'll be like, ew, I don't need to know that. And it's like, you have children, so I know that you tried, or I know what you're doing. Why is it not fair for me to say that I really want a child? I really want to have a baby. So I think that the conversations need to be opened up. And to Carly's point, for men, I think it can be even more isolating and in some ways almost more intrusive, because even if you're going through fertility treatments, I always bring this up with my friends that do welcome the conversation, bless their hearts, that for women, it is an intrusive and invasive process going through fertility treatment. You kind of feel like you're like a piece of machinery, or you're a car or something like that they're like tinkering around with and trying to figure out how to get it just right. But I find with men, they have to go in and, like, to Carly's point, they might feel shame. They might feel like, their place in life was to provide everything for their family, and they're having trouble even providing a family to the person they love. And in all types of relationships, there can be all kinds of unspoken dynamics that can be really isolating. I think the more we talk about it and talk about the TMI stuff, the better. And then I'll wrap up my point here by saying that one of the most empowering things I've ever experienced, and kind of goes back to your mentor conversation earlier, is being able to go to my bosses at my HSA, Tim and Steve, and tell them, hey, I'm actually trying for a baby. I have been since I started here, by the way. Cat's out of the bag. And I'm going to be going through fertility treatment. So I'm going to be, taking trigger shots and feeling like crap for some of the time. I have like 11 a.m. appointments that I'll miss a little bit of work for and such. So I found that their mentorship in that, and their ability to hear it out as men and then support me through it, was like pivotal. It actually shaped everything I've done ever since. So
It's really like so incredible that you've had that support, and for you to open up like that too, because I like that's the thing that I sit here too and I think about, how does the average person, like you're working shift work, you're in a job where you can't easily leave for an hour and a half or whatever that is, or you can't just take an hour because you learn your appointment the next day is like less than 12 hours away. Like it is really tough to manage that, and to have people surrounding you at work, at home in general, that are understanding, that care, that want to understand how to best support you, is like life changing for people going through the journey.
And maybe Carly can speak on this a little bit, because I'll probably miss some of the steps that people go through. But I find that a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what a fertility journey looks like. It's not like you just go to the doctor after a year and they're like, IVF. You got to go through these like different painful checkpoints where your hopes go up and then they get dashed, and your hopes go up. Or for like, I'm really happy for people who have success right away. But usually like it's, okay, let's try this prescription medication first and see if we can, induce ovulation. That's not really working. Let's see if we can use some gonadotropins, or let's try trigger shot. Let's try this. And I know for me, it was like, it wasn't just jumping right into the deep end. It was like, oh, this. And then everybody does their research on Reddit and every forum to find out, did anyone have luck with letrozole? Everybody's having luck. Everyone's getting twins on their first try. Okay, well, now I'm good. And then you go back to work. You're balancing this whole other life at the same time as you're trying to show up for work. not just physically, but emotionally. And the journey is exhaustive. Like it's not just jumping right into IUI and IVF for everybody. I don't know if you wanted to kind of touch on that, Carly, like the path that most people have to go down. I'm sure I just covered a few of them, but
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes for their first consult. It's like, okay, you get some testing ordered. Then you got to do that testing, and a lot of that testing can be cycle specific. So nobody realizes that from the time of first appointment to your second consult, it could be, you need at least a month for your day one to come. You don't know where you are. Are you in the beginning of your cycle right now? Or are you in the middle of the end? So there could be a waiting period. Then you go through a month of testing. And, for some clinics, that's going back to that specific clinic and they're kind of doing like a monitoring cycle for you at that clinic. Or it could be you have to go to outside imaging or lab. It just depends on the clinic. And then, okay, you get your testing done, you have your second consult booked. Well, maybe the doctor's really booked up. So you have to wait an extra month or two or who knows to get that second consult. Then you go in and it's like, okay, this is the testing, what the testing shows. And based on that, here are the options that I think are going to work for you. This is what I think your potential diagnosis is. And for some people, that's unexplained infertility, which means basically they don't know and you really need to start digging deeper to find that root cause. So hopefully sometimes additional testing may be ordered based on that first testing. So that could delay you further. And then maybe it's, oh, I think you should be able to get pregnant with timed intercourse. So we're going to add in a little bit of medications and you're going to still try at home. Or it could be IUI, or it could be doing IVF. Or is it there's a deeper problem and you have to consider things like third party reproduction, donor egg, surrogacy, depending on what the issue is. And then there's more research involved and more planning involved in that. And then it's, are you financially ready? Are there barriers there? Can you only do funded IVF? Is funded IVF even available to you? So do you need to stop, wait for that funding, or stop and save up money? So, and then it's the appointments. It's okay. Well, you have maybe one appointment somewhere between day 2 and day 5 of your cycle when you're in treatment. And then starting around day 8 or 9, you're back there every day, every other day for however long it takes you to grow a follicle, like a week or two. And then, okay, maybe you get a little bit of break in your luteal phase and then you're back for a pregnancy test. And then, okay, what if it doesn't work the first time, which for a lot of people, it doesn't. So, they're going through this for minimum usually 6 months to a year and potentially way longer depending on what's going on. And then so maybe, and this is where it becomes physically exhausting, mentally exhausting, emotionally and financially exhausting because that's a big part of it. It's do you have the ability to do back-to-back cycles, or financially you can't do that. So then that delays you further because you maybe do a cycle and you have to take a month or two, or you do 3 cycles and then you got to wait 6 months because you can't afford. And that's also an issue. And I think something that needs to be considered for people is what resources do you have available? And that needs to be considered when picking the type of treatment because not everyone has the ability to do a ton of timed intercourse, a ton of IUI, and then a ton of IVF. It's like that can be so exhausting. And then to your point that you made earlier about what are people's careers? What are their jobs? And a big thing that I think about a lot is I think a lot about people who work in healthcare and people who are teachers. When you're working kind of sometimes in like a corporate world or business, sometimes like your benefits packages or your time off or the flexibility is sometimes the HR departments are really good. It's a little bit more forgiving. But when you're, a teacher, it's school starts at this time and it ends at this time. And it's so hard for people who are working in the school system to be able to come to appointments like after school's already started, or people who work in healthcare who are literally dedicating their entire lives to the health of others. And it's, well, I can't just show up for my shift whenever. I can't do these appointments, or their work's giving them a hard time, or they're trying to shift change all the time. And people will maybe do it at the beginning and then they get annoyed with them and then they can't get those shift changes anymore. And it's like, man, you're saving people's lives and you can't even take care of your own health. It's crazy. And I think that's something that needs to be worked on as well in our society.
I think so too. I think, like, even myself, I have the most flexible job, the most understanding employers. And my husband had a job where he was traveling for work. So that obviously made things tricky. If he got called on a job in, Toronto or in Calgary and it was right over a fertile window, then you've already been medicating, you've already been doing all the things, and now you won't even be together. So there's so many things, even in the best case scenario, there's so many things that people going in through infertility are dealing with on a daily basis. One time was just at work and I was on my ovulation induction medication. So I knew it was coming. I didn't have to book off work. I was feeling fine and everything. in the middle of the day, it felt like someone shot me in the ovary, because ovulation induction medication will make it feel like you're like, I was making the joke with some of my girlfriends, like I'm laying an egg at work right now. And it's like, even the smallest little thing, even though you have the most flexible workplace and everything, is so disruptive, and it all just adds up. Like the things that people don't think of that are so small but are so huge in the world of infertility. Like, oh my gosh, I got my first luteinizing hormone spike. I saw 2 lines on a LH test for the first time ever. It feels groundbreaking for someone who might be going through infertility. For everyone else, they're like, yeah, I do that every month, whatever. Everything feels amplified and groundbreaking in that infertility journey. So I think it's something where there's tons of misunderstanding and misconceptions around what that journey is like. I have a controversial question for you, Carly. And we don't have to keep it in the podcast if you don't want to. But I thought the other day about asking you, because I heard it in a YouTube video. A doctor said he doesn't believe in unexplained infertility. He thinks it's just that it hasn't been looked into enough, and that we don't have the resources to diagnose every single person right down to the very granular details. Do you believe in unexplained infertility, or do you kind of agree with what he was saying?
I would tend to agree with what he is saying. I have seen people who have been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and I've seen them then find a root cause after, whether it's through switching clinics, getting more advanced testing done. They have, dug into things like the microbiome, or ended up after failed IVF cycles. They had an unexplained infertility diagnosis and then figure out, oh, the sperm looked good, and then it was fragmenting like a ton, just different things, or they've found like alloimmunity or immune issues. So I feel like when people have a diagnosis of unexplained infertility, and maybe we're just going to try a few cycles and see what happens, and it's not working, and you're, with a provider that maybe's not passionate about really trying to dig deeper, that maybe you need to get a second opinion. There's also things I've seen unexplained, and this person's end up having had endometriosis that was undiagnosed. So you need to dig deeper. It's not right to be like, well, we don't know what's happening, so we're just going to throw things at the wall until something sticks. Absolutely not. I think there is available resources and testing, imaging, all kinds of things out there, and you need to exhaust those resources. And if you've done everything and then you still can't find it, then I mean, it is what it is. But to not do any advanced testing, just be like, we don't know. It's not good enough.
If I can add perspective there, I totally agree with Carly. Like, this is one of the things that I'm super passionate about, because I think, like, when we're talking about our reproductive system, I was speaking on a femtech panel, and one of the parts of that conversation was, often fertility issues are the first sign and first reason why a chronic or other issue is actually found. Like, you don't know that your super painful periods aren't actually normal until you start digging into your fertility issues and uncover that there's other issues happening. But also, it's not for everyone. It's not like there's one major issue that's wrong. Like, oh, you've got endometriosis, and that's, or adenomyosis, and that's causing the issue. Like, for some people, it's a bunch of little things that might be off on both sides of on one or both sides of the people making up the family, or it's like a bunch of big things that are all going. And I found, like, for myself, you know, my, like, I had PCOS, so in ovulation. So it should have been like, I was set up to expect that the first timed intercourse cycle should work. And then as we dug, it's like, oh, you actually have autoimmune conditions already. And oh, you actually have painful sex and really painful periods. So, like, we need to dig into that. But I wasn't actually able to, and I had to advocate for going to get a laparoscopy, which took 2 years for me to go get, to find them endometriosis. And as you said earlier, Danielle, it's like, every month is just like a painful waiting period to have to wait to find that diagnosis. I totally believe that it's a matter of, like, how far healthcare, the fertility doctors are overwhelmed. So how do you, as the patient, like, try to figure out all the different things that may or may not be wrong, what you can control, what you can advocate for, to, like, try to get to a diagnosis, because that increases your chances of success, obviously, so much.
Yeah, I can relate with everything you just said. When I first started going through infertility treatment, they did all the testing and everything. regular periods, totally ovulating, everything's totally fine, seems totally fine. Husband, like flying colors kind of thing. They were like, we can't figure out what's going on here. And so did two rounds of IUI and that didn't work. And then they sat me down and they said, well, the next step is going to be IVF. And I remember my husband and I we said, we're going to give it a few minutes to talk about it. We'll get back to you. And my husband and I sat down together and talked about it. And my husband said, I just feel like they haven't looked at everything. Is there any way we can go through a nurse practitioner instead, or a holistic nurse practitioner, a naturopath, someone who can get a second opinion that isn't a fertility clinic, which is another tricky part of this, is that in our country, fertility clinics are a lot of times private. So it's hard to trust that they're not just pushing you for the most expensive treatment. So I actually started going to a nurse practitioner and we started a relationship. And then eventually I decided I'm closing that book. Forget it. You know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go get skincare now. So I went to her because she works in women's health altogether. And I said to her, I'm not preventing. So I can't use retinol. I can't use Accutane, things like that. But I want to treat myself. I want to do something for my skin. My skin's really been bothering me. And she goes, oh, your skin is bothering you and you have infertility? And I said, yeah, I've had acne since I was 13 and it all comes in right here like a beard, like it's like beard acne. And she goes, oh, that's interesting. Have you ever had your thyroid checked? And I said, no, I've never had my thyroid checked. So we did a whole symptom analysis before we did a thyroid check. And my eyes always hurt too. My eyes always feel like there's pressure all the time. And she goes, it really sounds like you have a thyroid imbalance to me. So sure enough, she sends me, comes back, I have Hashimoto's. And she said, even if you had gone for IVF, she said it quite forcefully, but I'm going to use her terms because I think it's impactful. She said, you could force a pregnancy upon your body and you wouldn't have sustained it. You could pay the $20,000 or whatever to force it and you would have lost it anyways because your thyroid levels are out of control. Your thyroid antibodies are out of control and your cortisol levels are out of control. So you were never going to be able to do this unless we got that under control first anyways. So now it's been 2 years since I started working with her. I've been put on the medications that I need daily and everything is starting to level out and look good again. We're starting to see that my cortisol levels are normal again and my thyroid levels, my TSH, my T4, T3, everything's looking really good. And of course, last year was the first time I ever saw a positive, or sorry, not last year. Well, I guess it was the end of last year. It was a few months ago, but it's January. So October, I was pregnant. For the first time, I had a pregnancy test that was positive. Unfortunately, that ended in a loss, but she said, this is progress. We finally figured out what is going on. And so we have more hope now than ever, but the fertility clinic never bothered to check my thyroid. So
And that's like, first of all, I'm sorry for the loss. It's like, no matter, like, it's tough. No, like, it's so hard when you're dealing with loss. And I think your story and my story and so many other stories are really around, like, you're dealing with a whole body issue. It's not like you're just looking at your uterus and ovaries, you're not just looking at the sperm. You're really looking at so many different systems in the body, thyroid, pituitary gland, like so many, like gut health that they're now showing can lead to fertility issues, my skin as well. Like there's so many things going on that are clues to, like, just trying to figure out what's happening, and the fertility clinics just don't have the time. They just don't have the time to dig into that level of detail. And so it's so true. Like, there's so many people I've talked to that are looking at alternative methods to supplement that, to try to better understand what else they can do that's within their control, that they can dig into, and even just to be heard about, and someone to actually, like, prompt them to think about something and maybe not even known to, like, tell a professional.
I was actually shocked when you were telling your story, Danielle, that they didn't check your thyroid because almost every doctor I've met with or worked with over the years runs someone's thyroid and a thyroid antibody. So if their TSH is off, to see is it an autoimmune condition as well. That's like pretty standard, and checking things like vitamin D levels, stuff. So I'm sorry that happened to you because that should have been caught like right away, because your thyroid. I have seen so many women that didn't know that they had thyroid issues, and infertility treatment, the fertility doctor is actually the one putting them on the medication. And then it's like during the fertility treatment, then it's like, okay, we're going to let your family doctor know. We'll keep ordering it. But then once you transition out of fertility care, this is something that needs to be continued. And if the levels are really, really out of whack, it's like you're referring them to an endocrinologist because it's like, okay, you need better, stronger care. Because not only does it affect your ability to get pregnant, but if it's an autoimmune thyroid issue, it affects your ability to continue to carry a pregnancy. And there's other medications you may need in the luteal phase to add on once you get that positive pregnancy test or just right after even ovulation. So that's something, if you haven't looked into that, I would.
No, I'm actually, so that's exactly what, so fertility clinic, I guess, yeah, that was just not a very good experience. And I appreciate you kind of like walking me through that. Once I found the nurse practitioner, I always like imagine her with like a halo around her head, kind of probably how Jessica thinks of you, Carly, because I'm like, okay, she doesn't, she had no ulterior motive. She just wanted to get me the care I needed. She got me on Synthroid, and then she put me on progesterone for my luteal phase. And then now I have her, and I have another care practitioner that he put me on letrozole. So I have this actual cycle that I'm in right now, speaking of TMI, is the conceptually best cycle we've ever seen, because I finally was able to find some care practitioners that have, carried me along the journey, which is a great segue into my next question for both of you. I know a big part of what myStoria is doing is giving people the equipment to advocate for themselves. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like a theme throughout, as you said, our conversation is that reality that in the healthcare system in general doesn't just have to be fertility, but amplified in fertility is the need to advocate for yourself. And I think the big thing that also it kind of under that umbrella of advocacy is this idea that like the doctor only can diagnose or treat or dig into what you're able to communicate to them. And I think there's this like fundamental challenge too where I don't know necessarily what to communicate or how to tell someone whatever. Like it's that time to be able to speak something, to then ask a question back with the doctor and to like almost like detective kind of dig into stuff. And so part of what myStoria is trying to do as well is help you understand what's normal, not normal, help you understand all the different symptoms or things that are going on with the nursing team or with the tools and the platform. Equip yourself with the knowledge to say, oh, these three constellation or whatever constellation of symptoms could actually be these five things. And here's the reasons why. And I feel prepared to go advocate for myself with my doctor to ask and dig into different questions. And so the other portion of that too is not just that symptom detective, it's that full reality, like that lived reality of being a patient in care in terms of what Carly said before, like anchoring what you're asking, what you're wanting in your journey on your social, your cultural your wants, your boundaries that you've put in place, your emotional state, your financial state, like insurance that you have, insurance that you don't have, and to try to kind of like put all those pieces together to help the patient find the path that makes sense. And for a lot of people, IVF isn't needed if we can actually understand what's going on early or earlier in that journey and treat that or support that and then go down the road of doing what you can within your control as a patient. So there's a number of different components to myStoria, but the intent really is a deep expertise in the latest and greatest with reproductive technology wrapped around all these different tools and amazing nurses and humans like Carly that will sit there with you in your situation and be that like best friend tagging along with you and do whatever needs to be done to kind of help you through that journey, including empowering you with understanding and helping you take action or communicate those things with your doctors and whatever practitioners you're using.
Well, I can speak like everything Jess said, in like particularly like the concierge aspect of getting someone who has a background of years of fertility nursing and general nursing planners having me sort of I'm able to help you learn the language of fertility. I'm sure as you both know, it's like mind blowing when you go in, you don't know what your expectations should be. everyone's saying all these things and using all this language. You're like, I don't know what this means. I don't know how to communicate. So I am all for, seeking the appropriate help and putting together a healthcare team that does involve experts. If you're concerned about your fertility or your reproductive health or planning, I do think it's important to speak with an REI or a fertility expert, get the appropriate testing to figure out what decisions you can then make. And I think adding in a naturopath who works with the medical team is very important. They can't be overly contradicting each other. You need people working hand in hand. So for me to then help you improve the communication with your healthcare team so you understand this is what they're asking you, this is what they're telling you, this is how you can compose an email. These are the questions that you need to ask. Sometimes I'll speak with someone and they think they're focusing on, one thing and I'm like, yeah, that's great, but did you know about, B, C, and D? And that's when people are like, wow, like I didn't even know that that was a thing. And I'm like, yeah, you need to ask about these things. And then also connecting people with resources that are available. There's so much out there in terms of second opinions, other clinics, things you can do at home if you're living in a rural area, you don't have access to care. What can you order to your home? What things can you put in place? And there's so much out there and it's so overwhelming. People don't know. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to start. They don't know where to go. There's also sometimes a little bit of a fear. Like I've met people who, oh, like, I don't know. I was thinking about going to a fertility clinic, but like, should I? Maybe I should wait longer. And it's like, no, like you need to know if your fallopian tubes are open. If your fallopian tubes are blocked, like that's an issue. It's like knowledge is power. Don't let fear stop you. And don't let that thought of, oh, well, if I go to this clinic, they're just gonna pump me full of drugs and force IVF on me. It's like, no, that's not the case. And if that is the case when you go there, then that's not the right doctor or clinic for you. Get a second
Yeah.
opinion. So I can really help break things down and lead people down the path and give them the information that they need. And even if I've had people 5, 6 years in where I've been like, you haven't had this test done. You need to go get this test done. Like I can find the
Yeah.
the holes and help them advocate for those things as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important to debunk myths about fertility clinics, the fear of going, what it's going to be like. And something that I tell all of my friends, I'm a 32-year-old woman, and I have so many friends that have their perfect plan in place. They're like, I'm going to start trying for a baby when I turn 30. And I always tell them, don't wait for infertility to find out what cards you've been dealt, because I waited. I knew I wanted to get pregnant when my husband turned 30 and I was 25. I knew I wanted to start trying. Little did I know that it was going to be such a journey. If I had gone at 20 years old knowing that I probably want to have kids, just go and I think that's part of the space making it difficult because there's all the like you have to have been trying for a whole year without any success and things like that. But I think if you can find a nurse practitioner or someone who can advocate for you and you say, listen, I really wanna get everything in check so that when I'm ready to start trying, we're optimal. We're not like, I think that the tides need to kinda shift in that way because it's 1 in 6. So what's the harm in finding out what you've got right off the bat? And, kind of being able to advocate for yourself at least, because then if you know the cards you've been dealt and then you decide you don't want to have kids, that's totally fine. It doesn't hurt to know everything about your body. That is one benefit that has come from infertility is anyone I talk to is like, "Man, you are in tune." And I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah, I am. I know everything that's happening at any given moment. I can tell you my progesterone levels, my LH levels, my FSH levels. I can tell you everything because I use a device that monitors it and everything. Like I am in tune because I think it's really important whether you're trying or you're trying not to have kids too. It can be a really strong method of birth control too to know what your body's doing at any given time.
Yeah, your cycle is a marker of your general health. And that's what people try and always put it into like these two separate buckets. And it's like, no, what's going on with your body, your cycle is directly tied to your general health. And I think there's nuance too with well, I know there's nuance when it comes to the wait a year or wait a 6 months. There's specific criteria. So, if you're under 35, they may say wait a year, but that means you have perfect periods. They're perfectly regular. You have absolutely no other symptoms. Everything is like on point and key. As soon as you start having symptoms, it's like, no, no, no. those symptoms are a sign that something is wrong. And I feel like that's, family practitioners need to do maybe a better job of really doing that assessment before telling people that they have to wait. But, and also even like the 6 months when you're older. Well, maybe, but one, I just wouldn't because of age. But two, like again, is everything absolutely perfect? And then have you even had your partner's sperm tested? Because what if there's no sperm? What if there's a problem? And there are so many fertility clinics that you can get a referral and say, hey, I want to know my fertility status because if something's wrong, I may be considering something like freezing my eggs and fertility preservation. So I need to know. You can say that, and some of them will take self referrals, some of them need a referral, but it's okay to go to your family practitioner and say, hey, I want to have children. I'm not sure if anything's wrong, but if it is, I want to preserve my fertility. So I don't want to wait a year because I don't believe that I have that time. I want a referral. I want to see the specialist. Like that's your right. And like you said, Danielle, there's kids like if you're having a hard time, there's, let's say, get myStoria, I can help you like, find ways to get those referrals and do those things. But there is at home things that you can do. So if you start testing and tracking things at home, you're going to end up maybe picking up on the nuances and these symptoms and these things that are wrong to like help you back you to say, hey, I need to dig deeper in this. I mean, there's, teenage girls living with PCOS and they're finding they're ending up having like hypertension after so many years. It's like you shouldn't be, 18 years old with high blood pressure.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Natalie Crawford. She's like an influencer doctor. Yes, big fan. And she always says your period is a vital sign. It is a vital sign. It's the same as your pulse. You need to know what's going on. And I think something you touched on too is not only does your cycle have to be perfect and that you have a regular period, a consistent period, and a healthy period, but is your ovulation happening in the middle of your cycle or is it happening at the end of your cycle and you have a really short luteal phase? Because for me, I always had a really regular cycle. Everything seemed really healthy. It was short, it was 25 days, but it's in that normal, you know. And then I had a doctor actually monitor my cycles and he was like, well, yeah, your cycle's, 25 days, but you ovulate on day 18. So your luteal cycle isn't giving you enough time to build up an implantation bedding and actually get a conception here. Another thing, and it's a progesterone thing. Put me on progesterone. Next month, my cycle is proper. My ovulation had enough time after the fact. And then one other thing that you said that kind of piqued my interest was the egg freezing, because I think that's somewhere where the needle is moving to is egg freezing used to be like a last ditch effort. And now I think it's being seen as preventative care. If you're in your early 20s and you don't know when you'll want to start a family, but you're pretty sure there's a good chance you'll want kids, and if your benefits cover it, it might be worth getting your eggs frozen so that you have more optimal chances later on.
Yeah. Also think people don't understand that there could be diagnosis. Like this is why it's important to track and know your cycle. It is so critical what you're saying and know when you ovulate because how can you report abnormal symptoms if you don't know what they are? So many people normalize symptoms because auntie or mother experienced those things and they thought that was normal. They tell you, oh, it's normal for you to have insane cramps. I had insane cramps. It's like, no. And you need to know these things because you need to know if at a young age, and I've met people, unfortunately, who were in premature ovarian failure in their, early 20s and they had to make that decision, are you going to freeze your eggs and preserve your fertility or you need to decide and have children now? I've met several people that unfortunately that was the situation that they were in and it's like thank goodness they were tracking, knew to say something and had a good doctor to say, whoa, like no, don't wait a year. We need to send you to a specialist right away. Something concerning is going on. Like that's a possibility. And people just don't know that because we're not taught that as a young age that, everyone's fertility, there's certain guidelines and we know it decreases as we age. That's just how it is. You get these influencers or people on the internet saying, oh, I had a friend or my aunt had babies at 40 and they were absolutely fine. It's like, do you understand that is not the norm? That is a very small percentage. And when you're spreading those things or you're seeing these stars online, oh, they had a baby at 47 or 45, it was great, but they don't say anything about their journey. Were they a person who used donor egg, which is fine, and it's fine for you not to disclose that information, but it's like, we need to put the norm out there and not just these outlier cases so that people really understand what's going on and what's true and what's not. And it's like, and then you have the norm, but then you have these people that unfortunately their fertility timeline for them may be way shorter, and it could be, genetics or something like that, and it's just unfortunate. But we need to be in tune with our bodies and taught the appropriate information when we're young so that we can take care of ourselves.
I think too, like, Carly said the word nuance, and that's like one of the like big things that I looked back on my journey was like even if you think about the like intake form for a fertility clinic or a doctor, like at least the one that I've filled out as on my journeys, the question like, is your period normal or abnormal? Like that is the premise that then tells them should we dig more into this or not. But for me, it's like abnormally normal. I don't even know how to describe it fitting into one bucket. And even if I was tracking it early, like to your point, it's like I didn't know that it's not normal to like not have 14 days between ovulation and your period. I didn't know to tell someone that. And that was like a running theme throughout. Really, we even have it in myStoria, like the wish I would have knowns are the things that you need to be equipped with to know to even question it and say, okay, I need to like dig into this nuance or I need to look into this because most of fertility and reproductive health challenges, I mean, hormonal, sexual, anything is nuance. It's not like very black and white. And you even go to the doctor and you get your testing done and you have to get testing done on cycle day 21. Well, for me, I also ovulate on 17 or 18. Cycle day 21 is going to tell them that I haven't ovulated because it's only 3 days past when I would have actually had my LH spike and or ovulated. And so that is incomplete information. What it should be is 7 days post ovulation, you go get that test done or post LH spike or whatever to get that test done. And so there's just so much of that we're walking into these journeys as patients, even if you're just like talking to your family doctor. Like it's like this like your journey with that care provider is so dependent on your ability and knowing how to communicate what these nuances and equip yourself with information. And I think it's just so important to like to tell the generations that are younger, like, it's really like, it really is critical that you know, and you equip yourself with the ability to advocate for yourself and ask questions and push back and dig for information and do stuff at home that when you can do it. Even my 20-year-old cousins, I'm like, you need to go get your fertility checked. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's not expensive to just get general stuff checked.
You know what's so crazy about what you said is like that the doctor, or I guess the intake form is asking you if your period's normal. But if it's anything like my experience, define normal. I didn't know what it's supposed to feel like. I always thought it's supposed to be debilitating. I was like, man, I can't even move. I'm on like 2 ibuprofen every few hours, and I'm like crying and bleeding at the same time. And it's kind of funny. I just thought of it how like it was so stigmatized that even tampon commercials used blue Kool-Aid instead of
Yeah.
a red liquid to show the power of this product. And it's like, it was so taboo to talk about this for so long. How are we supposed to know anything about it? I couldn't even talk about it with my own dad. Like, how are we supposed to talk about this to doctors if this whole time we haven't been able to say a word about it? It's like, and it's the
You're supposed
most,
to be a warrior. Get on the horse and
yeah,
ride it, like all those commercials, like you're saying, where
yeah.
people are doing like these extreme sports. So if you're not that way, you're like, oh, and you don't want to say anything, because it makes
Yeah.
you feel like
It would always be like, or there'd be like stigmas and jokes around like heaviness and stuff. So you'd never want to talk about how heavy your flow is or whatever. I'm thinking of like a line in Mean Girls. I think there was one, although Mean Girls is probably not the best reference, but there's everything that we've ever been trained on as women, though, when it comes to like periods and stuff like that is like, shh, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. I remember being a kid and my mom would be like, if you need something, I'll go get it for you. Like, don't ask dad because it's just weird. And that was just a sign of the times, right? I think things are changing. The conversations are much more welcomed now. But I don't know how we're supposed to know if our stuff is normal. I don't know how we're supposed to know that if you've never been taught that. Like, what is normal? What is the definition?
not everyone grows up in the same country with the same type of schooling where, okay, at least, depending on your age right now, you're learning even basics. But like I've met many people in my life who were never taught anything. So when you say what's your day one, they don't know what that means. They don't know what a cycle means. It's from, You count from the day one to the day one. I've met people who just thought your cycle was only, and even people who I'd say are young now and in our country and were schooled and educated in our country, they thought your cycle was only when you bleed. Like, so that's still when I meet and talk to people that's what they were taught, and I can't fault them. Like, they just didn't know, and it's like, okay, this is why we're seeing issues here, 'cause people just have no idea.
Perfect example of that on my end too is, going back to like the wait 12 months before you do something. I remember like when Peter and I kind of knew, okay, this is going to be it. We're together, like we want kids, all that stuff. I remember like proactively thinking, all right, Jess, like you didn't have period for years when you were playing soccer in high school. And like, I remember my mom telling me, like, you need to make sure, like, let's dig into this because this can impact you down the road. Like, I didn't even like, I know she said that to me, but I didn't even think about it before then. But I had this like thing in the back of my head, like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my doctor. But because I was like not actively trying when they asked, well, have you been trying for a year? I was like, no, but I'm just concerned. And the basics were basic tests like your FSH, LH, like the cycle days. And then I had to go to an OB. And then the OB told me to get an IUD to manage my PCOS symptoms because it's increasing risk of cancer. So then I did that, but really I was just trying to understand my fertility. And at the same time, what no one's I think is really important to say is like TMI again across the board, but like Peter and I never really used protection for a good portion of our relationship. And like technically that's like if you're not getting pregnant when you're not using protection, not being careful, like that is a sign that something else is going on and you just don't know to tell someone of it. So I I just think like I didn't know to say to someone my light periods. I have light periods. Like I don't know. We don't talk about with each other necessarily. And women more than men in terms of this issue. But I don't like go to my friend and say like, "What does your cycle day one look like? Like how much are you actually bleeding versus me?" I don't. You don't notice. You don't even know to say something. So I think like all that being said, there's just like I think it's just like so important to know how just to know about your body, know about what's normal and not normal in the nuance of it and know what to tell the doctors and the symptoms you're seeing and your boundaries that you want to do and what you want to proactively do regardless of the time like you've been trying or not or what you want to do in the future. Like it's your body, it's your life, it's your want for a baby and it's I don't know. I could go on forever, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna need a part 2 because this is getting really interesting, and I could keep going on this all day long. But I feel like it's because we're all so passionate about the same thing. So I'll kind of bring it back to what we've kind of discussed and how myStoria and my HSA, I like that both also start with my. It makes it even more beautiful coming together, but it's kind of that myStoria is trying to solve those problems of equipping patients with what they need, educating them, myth busting for them, getting them the resources, the good support system of medical practitioners. Some other things that I love about myStoria myself since logging in is, being able to track your timeline is huge because, like I said, everything in a fertility journey is groundbreaking. I always kind of wish I had some way to journal this. And funny enough, the only way I ever found was by creating a completely private Instagram that only me and a few small friends see because I thought it was worth recording the journey. It's worth documenting. But I think that timeline, that is a really smart thing that you guys have on the dashboard there. And I kind of want to bring it back to why we want to work together. And I think that the synergies are in that the other piece where people feel like they don't have control is the affordability. And a lot of employers want to support employees through this. Because as an employer, I always think that it's good to have people with families employed. They're good people. They want to be there and they want to work hard. They want to provide for their families. It's a benefit for everyone if employees are supported through this journey. Do you find that there are gaps in benefits or that it's not talked about enough? Maybe I'll leave this one to you, Jessica.
Yeah. So absolutely. Like it is becoming like, it's interesting because I've heard from some employers that we've talked to say, hey, like myStoria can help your employees. Like the general, like every so often I hear the unfiltered, which I appreciate the unfiltered response of, well, I don't really want my, like, it's actually harmful for me to have my people get pregnant, which is like a mind blowing response. But it's like, okay, let's like try to at least it said, let's try to debunk that and understand it. But it's becoming more normal I mean, California just implemented, I think, a requirement to have fertility benefits in their insurance. And I think it's becoming more of a talked about topic of benefits, but it still is, well, how many of my organization is actually going to struggle with this? And where does this sit in the priority list with everything else that's out there? And we've got small budgets and we're trying to help a ton of people. And so I understand all of that stuff. But to your point, like, what you don't see behind the scenes with patients is, if the stat is true, which it's well researched, that less than 15% of people actually need IVF, and most people just need the support system and the supports to actually uncover what's going on and try to then get pregnant and achieve their goals. Like, this is affordable to implement across the board, and it meaningful to someone, because whether or not you support it or not as an employer, that person is going to go somewhere else that does, because wanting to have a family is just like a fundamental part of who you are and what you want to do. Like, it's not, you can't separate my dream of wanting to be a parent from who I am at work and what I'm willing to do. So that's a really long-winded way of saying I think it's really growing in want. I think there's a lot more education to continue to do, and I appreciate, like, even just this conversation and putting this out there for people. And that's part of what I'm just trying to do, is educate that adding support for people in the fertility journey doesn't have to be expensive. And the flip side of that, and I will stop talking after this, or you can dig into anything with me, is like, we have to be anchored in, and it's not a matter of all the fertility clinics are evil and debunking that. But the reality is, you're in a private pay industry right now that if you've got one IVF cycle covered or some medication covered up to a certain amount, or you've got whatever you got covered, how do you make sure that that's as successful as possible for you when you dip into that for yourself, especially if, like, not everyone can even afford to even remortgage their house or empty their savings account or take out a line of credit or do what they need to do to afford it. So I think it's just so important that you've got this like support system around you as you enter through. And that could be therapy, it could be emotional. Like, I mean, we were close, and I've said this before, but my husband and I, like, even just the impact on our relationship and how I show up to work, and even just the supports for additional therapy to work through it together. Like, there's just so much around it.
Yeah, there is so much there that got me like fired up because for the talking about employers who don't want their employees to get pregnant, that's just so silly to me, because if your employee is so talented that you can't function with them on a mat leave or a pat leave, then they're gonna leave you anyways to find benefits that provide this. Because to your point, fertility and family building is always probably gonna take precedence over everything else. If you stand in the way of someone and that lifelong dream that isn't just raising kids in their 20s and 30s, it's being grandparents later in life. There is way more at stake than just their job. And if you can support them, you're probably going to have an employee who says, I'm a lifer here, rather than one that says, I'm leaving because this company has a competitive benefits package. And then another myth that I'd like to debunk is really common understanding out there is that, like you said, how many people in my organization really need this? Well, if you put it in a spending account, then you only pay when it's utilized, and no one's going to fake it. No one's going to go fake an IVF, or if they do, there's something else going on there. But if it's only if you offer everyone in your organization, even just a small amount, that can cover them for a year of letrozole, something to give them. If you give everyone a spending account with a small amount that gets them through the door, 1 in 6, if that, people might use it, and then you only pay based on utilization with the spending account. I think that we could have a whole other podcast about like how employers will actually see better employee retention, return on investment, everything like that would go way better if they just give a fertility benefit to their employees, because it's way bigger than their job ever will be. Building a family. See, now I'm starting to get teared up. I'm like, I love my job. You guys have seen my LinkedIn. It's like my HSA, I bleed my HSA blue. I am like but the fact that they supported me through my fertility journey and helped me with that and provided me a spending account and everything, and the flexibility at work to go through, going to the clinic in the morning to get my IVF, or sorry, my IUI, or, taking the day off because I'm going to be on a trigger shot or whatever, and it doesn't feel good. That stuff makes me want to be a lifer here. If they didn't provide that, I'd be like, peace, I'm going somewhere else, somewhere that supports me as a human being, not as, a number.
That's I understand that, for example, the small businesses. Okay, maybe you can't afford what the larger businesses can afford. But to your point, like that spending account, that as you've described how your CEO has and your bosses have supported you, is like their education to say, a pregnancy loss is bereavement. Like, give me some time to like work through that. It's really affecting me. Um, I'm really going through something with my partner because this is stressful on our relationship and our at-home life, and I can't get a break anywhere, and this is emotionally taxing. It's the understanding that, baby showers that you're required to go to at the office are incredibly triggering, for example, and maybe there's better ways to handle that and support both sides of journeys. And so like I think there's like that education component that I think is so critical as we kind of continue to normalize and make this normalize benefits across the board in whatever that format is, and normalize the conversation that it is not just a female thing, it is a male thing. It is whoever that family dynamic is, but it's also something that is way more prevalent than you actually think it is in whatever format. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Okay, I'm going to put one question out to both of you. And it might be one that you need a few minutes to think about, but that's okay. What is it that gives you the most hope right now in this industry?
That gives me the most hope. I immediately, I'm gonna put an answer. I'm gonna respond to that, and I'd probably take a day and be like, oh, this and this and this. But again, I'm not good at being concise. Um, I think it's patients and people that are going through their journeys coming out and saying, "Me too. I'm going through this as well. This sucks. We need to fix this." Like, and the doctors that are leaning in and saying, you deserve as a patient to be the center of your care. You deserve to understand what your options are. Like, it's that dynamic of a patient, like us talking about it more, that gives me a lot of hope, because it then talks to the other side of the industry to say, we need more support. We need earlier support. We need not to be put into a bucket of 12 months of trying and all this stuff. So this is like this whole journey for me, and my story has been healing. But that is one thing that just lights me up every single day, is the people that are willing to be vulnerable and put it out there, and see others that say, me too, me too, me too.
Beautiful. Well said.
I agree with everything Jessica said. It's the people coming out and talking about things and really taking this thing that used to be considered more niche and bringing it to the forefront, because it's not. It's experienced by so many people, but also part of those people, it's not just the patients and the people going through the journey speaking out. It's some amazing experts and REIs who are very passionate, who really care about their patients, and who are doing a really good job, are out there. They're out on social media and they're speaking and they're saying, hey, like, this is what you need to do. They're debunking things so that people actually can understand what good individualized care should look like from someone who's actually providing it. And they can help make those better decisions for themselves, and it helps them be smarter as well. And it's helping, these doctors, they are doing research. The continued evolvement of reproductive medicine and the continued research that's coming out is amazing, and it's giving me like a lot of hope for especially people who have, had to walk away, or people who've had many failed cycles, that hey, we're starting to get somewhere with the addition of technology and newer research and pushing the boundaries, and doctors out there pushing the boundaries and really helping people. It gets me excited, because it's like, hey, you don't have to just stay at this one clinic with this one doctor. There's a lot of other resources and other things out there, and people who are willing to do what it takes to help you.
Yeah, I think that you really touched on something that I find inspiring specifically about Jessica is that someone who has decided for now to just walk away, close that chapter, isn't walking away. They're making it better for other people, uplifting other people, which is so interesting in this space because there is, it's not jealousy. There needs to be a different word. It's not jealousy. It's not envy. It's that gut punch of someone else, at a baby shower, someone else announcing a pregnancy, someone else getting there. Even if they had a struggle themselves, it can feel like that the only way to really encapsulate that feeling is I am so happy for you and I am so sad for me. And I think the fact that you have the strength to show up and try to get other people there, Jessica, as someone else who has not had success, it's like, well, it's going to make me cry too. And I think that's like, you really need to hear it, is that is huge. That is a huge, huge thing that you're doing. And that's what gives me hope, is that it's a community. It's a community effort. It's employers showing up for employees. I think that there is more of that happening. It's families being willing to listen to the stuff that's uncomfortable. It's people advocating for themselves and people advocating for each other, even if they didn't have success themselves. It's like, it really is a beautiful thing coming out of a really challenging thing that the whole world is dealing with.
I appreciate you saying that, and I couldn't agree more. And I just, to end my final thought too, is same thing, Danielle, for how you're showing up. Like the first time we met, we were like kindred spirits, just absolutely bonding over our journeys and what we've gone through. And I think what a lot of people that haven't gone through this, or watched people or treated people like Carly have gone through this, is like, this is complex trauma. Like, it is traumatic to go through this journey that we've gone through, and everyone grieves differently. Even like, it's not just grieving like walking away from baby, but it's also like grieving the easy excitement of a pregnancy because you've had a loss and you can't even be excited about that pregnancy, or grieving the fact that you can't do it in the amazing words that's used naturally. It is through other means, which I hate that word, but it conveys the point in this conversation. And I think like how you show up to work dealing with that complex trauma is just like, is tough. And it's tough around your support circle that either doesn't know how to show up for you, doesn't, or shows up for you amazing, and how that impacts you as well. So I think like I really just want to nail down the fact that everyone needs to understand that, just like any other complex medical issue out there, this really is traumatic for the person or the people that are going through that journey. And it's life-changing, either financially, emotionally, or in every single way.
Yeah, I read a statistic the other day that said that infertility is the second most traumatizing diagnosis to cancer. So, and I think that's true. And you grieve so many different things, to your point. Like, you don't just grieve that you don't have a baby. You don't grieve that other people get so pregnant so easily. You're grieving, like you said, if you've had a loss, you're grieving that old self that used to get excited about positive pregnancy tests. That's the old version of me. Now I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to keep it close to myself. And you're grieving all kinds of, you're grieving, to your point, that you and the person you love the most can't just have this happen naturally in a romantic way. You have to go about it in a way that doesn't feel, although I have a way of romanticizing everything. I can make anything like a lovely, beautiful experience, but really it is in so many ways unfair. It really is unfair in so many ways.
What I've sort of come to, and part of my truth in having worked with so many patients over the years, is the grief of the life you thought you would have, how you thought things would be, and all of the nuances that you guys said that goes into that. And I think grief is something that never truly really goes away. It becomes like a part of you. It's just that that grief just gets smaller over time, but it's always there, and you live with it, and you live with those memories, and even like the PTSD that you may experience, which a lot of people end up having, and you can obviously, there a huge mental health care portion of fertility is sort of under talked about, and that is the one thing I feel like working with people that they don't realize how important it is to maintain your mental health through the journey, because use up resources. So that is the one thing that people will put to the side because they want to use those resources for more cycles or other things. But it's like, don't. It's so important to understand the trauma and the grief that comes with this, to be able to take care of yourself. And it's okay to take a break if you're struggling, because that's one thing is people don't want to take a step back because every cycle and every month counts. But sometimes for your health, it is the better thing to do. And also the understanding that there can be multiple truths at the same time. Like you said, it's true that you can be happy for someone else and true that you're grieving at the same time. And that's okay. It's not a black and white situation. It's for fertility is an entire gray area.
Yeah, it's not black and white at all, and to your point too, like, I think it's also okay, like, the most important thing I've ever been told was my best friend when I told her I was closing this book, not just the chapter, closing the book and putting it on the shelf and moving on and diving into my career, and I am not thinking about pregnancy anymore. That is off my radar, and she just said, "Okay, I'm here for you, but it's okay to change your mind." And then a few months later, I got a positive pregnancy test out of nowhere, and and all of a sudden that chapter is right book open, back on meds, back on this, back on that, because I'm like, that is a breakthrough. We have a breakthrough. Um, so I think it's really important for anyone who's going through the journey to understand, like, yes, it is okay to take breaks. It is okay. Every month doesn't actually have to count. It's okay. You can take a break. Yes, scientifically, every month counts, but really your mental health matters way more. And if there's anything else I learned from this whole journey is that if your cortisol levels are super, super high, that's impacting it too. It's really hard when you're in the space of infertility and people are like, well, just stop stressing out about it. But really, it's not that you stop stressing out about it or stop thinking about it. That's the big thing is people say stop thinking about it. And it's like, how could I ever? How could I ever stop thinking about it? Every time I see a mom who's pregnant or a mom with a baby, boom, I'm back in that place. But taking care of yourself, going for massage, going for a facial, distracting yourself with a hobby, take up pottery, I don't care, do something that like you can have it in the back of your mind, but take care of yourself, really take care of yourself.
100%. I think Danielle, and maybe this is could be cut in a future conversation, but I think there's like this important aspect too that I like. It's interesting that I had my girlfriends like you. Like, thankfully, my sister and my best friend were like the best humans on earth for me through this. Like, to your point, the words like, I'm just here to listen and it's okay. It's okay to feel how you want to feel and it's okay to change your mind. And like, just need a hug and someone to sit there with you. I'll do that. um, but I always, like, felt sad for my husband because he even said to me, he's like, "I can't go to the hockey change room and, like, have a conversation with guys about, like, the fact that we're struggling with fertility or, like, it could be me or all these other things," or the way people showed up for him was a little bit different for how they showed up for me, and so I just, like it's like seeing both people or whatever that family is again, like that male side of things. I think like I find hope in more men speaking out too to really destigmatize it and to then see that like it's not just I'm going through a lot physically because we have to do a lot as the female going through it, but there's this human, this person that's the love of my life that is also struggling and he's not able to express himself the way I can with my girlfriends over I wasn't drinking at the time, so tea or water or
Mm.
whatever, a walk. So we could dive into that another time, but I think it's like a whole great topic in itself too.
I think so. We'll do a part two where we talk about what support we can provide to men because to your point, I think what I've noticed is a pattern of men just kind of making a joke about it when they hear about it. Like they're not ready to like have a really hard conversation. So sometimes if it's like usually it's a group setting because my husband won't say it himself in most cases. But if we're in a group setting and I bring up infertility, a guy will be like, "You sure you're doing it right, buddy? You sure you're, blah blah blah." And it's like, what if you just said, "Man, that sucks. I'm really sorry. If you ever want to talk about it, like, I'm here for you." What if we just took that next step? But we do have close friends of ours, a couple that came over the Christmas holidays. We hadn't seen them in a few years. We knew that they were struggling with infertility as well, but we didn't know to what extent. Um, and the four of us had a really good conversation. And I found that was a really good way for the men to feel involved was because as women, we're more likely to just open up and we started talking. And We had no idea, but this couple that we're really good friends with had 3 concurrent miscarriages before they had a successful pregnancy. And it really just opened us all up to have this conversation of what it is like to be a man in that situation. And you have the disappointment, and you're also trying to guard your beautiful wife from having her feelings hurt. And you also want to celebrate because you don't want her to be like pulled down by all of this. And um anyways, it's something. There are so many facets of this that need to be debunked, demystified, and we need to just cut the crap and let everybody talk about it. I think is that is like the main thesis, is just if you just open yourself up to the conversation, whether you're an employer, an employee, a friend, a spouse, a sister, a brother, a mom, a dad. A lot of people don't want to talk about this stuff with their mom and dad because it's gross. It revolves around sex, but it's not gross. It's human life we're talking about. This is how we got here. So, anyways, now I'm going on a soapbox, but I think that's a really good point.
It's just like that lived reality, like even just how you feel like you're disappointing your parents because you're not giving them a grant. Like there's so many levels of complex emotions there. And even just how other people that you think are your safe space prove to be otherwise, not because they are trying to, but they just don't understand how to show up for you. And then there's like losing friends, pulling away from people. Like I became, and probably still am a little bit, antisocial, and I'm drained. Like like, because I just don't want to have it in my face all the time, and I'm trying to work through those emotions. So it's really complex. And Peter and I have been walked away from it for a couple years, and we're still working together in therapy in general in our lives, checking in with each other to see how we're feeling and how we're dealing with certain aspects of like just other people coming in. It's to your point, it's complex, and we're still working through our own grief. It's never, to Carly's point, never going to go away.
Yeah, and society still hasn't come to that point where we're all talking about, like, political correctness all the time, what you can and can't say, and the how do you approach people, and what to say to them, like, in general cultures when it comes to fertility is not there yet, because you still have people, it's like, "Hey, when are you having kids? When are you getting married? When are you having kids? When are you doing this?" And it's like, or, "Hey, do you have any kids?" And it's like, how about you say, "Hey, tell me about your family." Instead, you know what I mean? And don't ask those questions when people are of a certain age because maybe they're choosing not to, and that's none of your business, their choices, and maybe they're going through a journey. You just don't know that. It's just it's a weird thing. People don't think about it all the time, and then that just adds like unknowing pressure.
I remember watching a movie or a clip of a movie where I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. It was just a clip. I think it was an Instagram reel, and it said like only people with infertility will understand. And it's a clip of Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci in a movie together. And she gets a phone call. She's in her nightie. She gets a phone call. She picks up and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. Oh my God, what a wonderful surprise. Thank you for calling me. I'm so excited. I can't wait to catch up with you." And then she hangs up, and Stanley Tucci, who's playing her husband, looks at her across the room, slowly gets up and starts walking over her, and she crumples and starts wailing. And he's holding her and he's going, "I know, I know." And she just goes, "It's so not fair. It's just not fair." And I remember watching that and being like, that's exactly what it's like. It's a disenfranchised grief no one will ever understand. And you can be, like we said before, you're so happy for everyone else, but you're just like, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And it's your whole life ahead of you. It's grandkids. Am I going to be alone when I'm old? You're not. You're not. You have loved ones and loved ones' kids that love you and everything. But there's just so many avenues of disenfranchised grief that aren't brought to the forefront and aren't talked about. This was a really, really good conversation, as I knew it would be. I really appreciate you both having so much vulnerability. We're gonna have to do a part 2 because this is just too good. And I love what you're doing. I think it is so important.
Like cannot emphasize or echo exactly what you've said too. I just like, it's like therapeutic in an interesting way to just talk to people who understand, get it, are fighting the good fight to help others that are in the journey or coming after us. I love it. So I could talk about this for hours with you anytime. And even just in general, off podcast, if you ever need me on your journey, I'm a phone call, text, or whatever you need away.
Beautiful, and likewise.
Yeah, same here. If you ever want to chat, Danielle, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks again for listening today. I'm really thankful for this conversation and for the work Jessica and Carly are doing. Fertility can be a very hard journey, but there's real progress being made in that space, and it's encouraging to see people building tools and support systems that are going to make it easier, clearer, and less isolating. If you want to learn more about myStoria, head to myStoria.com, and if you want to learn more about my HSA, you can go to getmyhsa.com. If you want to hear more podcasts like this, just look up Beyond the Plan wherever you get your podcasts.